Aircraft carriers hold such importance for the United States government that a federal law mandates a minimum number of operational carriers for the U.S. Navy. That number is 11, but how is this number determined? And why is there such emphasis on aircraft carriers rather than other warships the size of the carrier fleet? The overall Navy and the entire U.S. military follows a formula rooted in a strategy centered on two major wars. But it is not what you might think. Being the most powerful is not the same as being powerful enough. While the United States possesses the world's largest and most capable Navy, simply ranking first does not guarantee adequacy, much like a champion fighter overwhelmed by multiple opponents. The strongest military may struggle against combined forces from several nations. So how much power is truly sufficient? U.S. military doctrine is built on power projection, the ability to deploy and sustain forces beyond its borders to support this. There are roughly 750 U.S. military bases in about 80 countries worldwide. However, where permanent bases are not available, the Navy becomes the primary instrument of power projection. This is exactly why aircraft carriers are so vital. Where is the closest aircraft carrier? It is said this is the first question a U.S. president asks during a crisis, but it is really the carrier's air wing that holds their interest. The carrier itself is essentially a mobile airbase. Its core function is to enable the operations of the aircraft. It carries similar to how bread serves as a vehicle for butter. The true power projection comes from the carrier air wing, which can deliver tactical air power over vast distances, including airborne early warning air interdiction and anti-surface warfare. The same law that mandates 11 aircraft carriers also requires a minimum of 9 carrier air wings. But how is the number 11 determined? The U.S. Navy's 11 supercarriers outnumber all other nations' carriers combined, and that is just in quantity. Aside from displacement, all American supercarriers are nuclear-powered, providing unlimited range. However, not all 11 are deployable at once. Typically, about 1/3 are in maintenance, 1/3 are training, and 1/3 are on deployment in practice. Only 2 to 3 supercarriers are deployed at any given time. Yet, this is considered enough to fight and win 2 major wars in separate regions simultaneously. Under President Lyndon B. Johnson, the U.S. military was sized to fight 2 wars at once. Later, a half-war scenario for conflict in the Third World was added. President Nixon adjusted this to a 1.5-war strategy. Each subsequent president has modified the approach, but the core measure remains the ability to engage in 2 geographically separated conflicts in overlapping timeframes. This is known as the 2 major regional contingencies, or 2 major theater war strategy. This capability to deter and defeat large-scale cross-border aggression in 2 distant theaters is viewed as essential for the U.S. to maintain its global power and protect its worldwide interests. A recent example of this strategy in action is the overlapping wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Iraq War began in 2003 with U.S. withdrawal completed in 2011, though ISIS resurgence prompted renewed involvement. The war in Afghanistan started in 2001 and lasted 20 years, ending with the U.S. withdrawal in August 2021. But the concept of preparing for 2 wars traces back further in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. U.S. territorial expansion into both the Pacific and Atlantic necessitated a naval presence in both oceans. The completion of the Panama Canal in 1914 allowed the Navy to shift between oceans without needing 2 separate fleets by the 1930s. With rising threats from Germany in the east and Japan in the west, defense planners had to consider simultaneous threats from 2 fronts. This led to the 1940 Vinson Walsh Act, also known as the Two-Ocean Navy Act, which funded a massive 70% increase in the U.S. Navy, the largest naval procurement bill in U.S. history. It emphasized aircraft and carriers, leading to the construction of 18 aircraft carriers and expanded facilities across the Pacific. Conceptualizing a 2-war strategy is one thing, but determining the specific force structure is another. How many Army divisions, Air Force wings, or Navy carrier strike groups are needed to execute it? The U.S. Navy's current goal is a 355-ship fleet by 2034, though it currently has 298 in retirements may challenge this goal. Aircraft carriers do not operate alone. They are protected by cruisers, destroyers, submarines, and supply ships, forming a carrier strike group. Some policy organizations like the Heritage Foundation advocate for an even larger military, not a 355-ship Navy, but a 400-ship Navy, and not 11 carriers, but 12 plus 1. The extra one accounts for a carrier typically in mid-life overhaul. The rationale for 12 is to maintain one carrier in each of 3 key regions, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Mediterranean Middle East, with 3 additional carriers supporting each deployed one. This rotation ensures crew readiness and ship health. Fewer ships can lead to longer deployments, which strain personnel and equipment. The U.S. Nimitz's 340-day deployment, ending in March 2021, was the longest carrier deployment since the Vietnam War. While proponents argue the 2 major theater wars strategy remains the most robust framework for sizing the military, the enormous costs of maintaining and growing such a force present significant challenges, especially as the U.S. military budget as a share of GDP has declined. In recent decades, additionally, new forms of threat like cyber warfare complicate the picture. Cyber attacks targeting U.S. communications or military command systems could severely undermine national security. The Two-Ocean Navy Act of 1940 was written for an era where power projection required physical assets, carriers, and pilots, at times celebrated in films like Top Gun. But as warfare evolves, one might wonder if a future film could be titled Top Hacks.